I have said many, many times, Dr. Martin, during this pandemic, that I believe that the entire purpose of the pandemic was to make mRNA a household word. You used the phrase universal vaccine. When you say universal vaccine, that was their goal, do you mean specifically mRNA, or what do you mean by universal vaccine? Unpack that.
Well, that's a beautiful question. And let's go to my favorite quote that I refuse to do a show without quoting, which is Peter Daszak. This is published in February of 2016, but the statement was made in 2015 during the gain of function moratorium. And this is a quote from the criminals themselves. This is not Dave Martin's opinion. This is their quote. Until an infectious disease crisis is very real, present, and at an emergency threshold, it is often largely ignored. Now, listen to this carefully. To sustain the funding base beyond the crisis, we need to increase the public understanding for the need of medical countermeasures such as a pan-influenza or pan-coronavirus vaccine. A key driver is the media, and the economics will follow the hype. We need to use that hype to our advantage to get to the real issues. Investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process. Now, what do I mean by coercion, by domestic terrorism, by any of the things I'm saying? Well, what I mean is that this is a crime that was admitted to being perpetrated on America and the world by the people who perpetrated the crime. And they even told us it would be the media hype that would get the public to accept the need for the medical countermeasure. We would need to use that hype to our advantage, and, quote, investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process. Now, Dr. Drew, Dr. Kelly, certainly in my medical training, did you ever in any medical school day in your life get told that the first goal of public health is to make sure investors profit at the end of a media hyped process? Is that part of our standard medical training? Is it any? And Dr. Drew, you know, listen, your work and the patent work in opioid crisis, you know, is something that I can't leave this opportunity without commenting on, because I, for years, tried to highlight the Sackler family's abuse of opioids and the opioid epidemic in the United States. The longest emergency use authorization we have had in this country is the opioid crisis, and the public doesn't know this. But what they don't know even worse is that the Sackler family patented non-addictive formulas of opioids so that they could not be produced. Okay? So this is not an accidental oops. This is criminals acting in a criminal fashion to harm people. It is not an accident. This is not an epidemic or a pandemic.
But I'm glad you brought the opiate crisis up, because I keep looking at that as a model for what happened during COVID.
Correct.
In sense that the playbook was exactly the same. But there's two components. But there are two components. One is a completely Machiavellian business organization saying things like investors will respond is simply factually true. It's Machiavellian as hell, but it's true. All right. But the key ingredient is an evangelical group of physicians who go out and persuade the regulatory organizations and the state medical societies, the professional societies, that this is the answer. They see themselves as wearing white hats and coming to save the world. They don't see themselves as criminals at all. They see themselves as saving the world. And so I'm wondering if these people don't, you know, look at the landscape of what's out there in viral research and think it's inevitable that something gets out. It's inevitable that there's a disaster. We must come up with these vaccine platforms and we're going to save the world. And the drug companies merely stand right behind them and say, yes, you will. That's right. That's exactly right. When in fact, both
Drew,
are completely out of line.
And Drew, I agree, but we have to add a couple other pieces which unfortunately blow up the justification side of this. Remember that side by side with NIAID's funding, side by side with that was DARPA's funding since 2005 of a biological weapons technology platform. You cannot put that genie back in the bottle. That is a statement that they made. It is a statement that they funded.
That's maybe where I agree with you. Maybe that's where the evangelical physicians are coming in. They know that, they see that, and they're thinking, oh, we have to have these countermeasures. We must come up with these gigantic universal platforms, and we've got to figure out a way to get there. And then they become Machiavellian in their way of getting there.
Okay, but I want to go back because I think that
you're right.
Go ahead, Dave.
All I was going to say was I think you're right, but my issue here, and this is where I have been outspoken and singular on this particular issue. You cannot take the 2015 statement of the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and you cannot spin that into anything other than a violation at the time of the Patriot Act's prohibition on coercion. The reason why the public is going to accept this is because of the media hype, not because of the facts, not because of the evidence. Yeah, we're going to use the media hype to accept it. And let's get clear on a second thing. The first funding for Moderna, Flagship Ventures, which is a mysterious organization, that's a whole nother show. But Flagship Ventures co-funded Moderna and CRISPR at the same time. Kelly, it's not just about mRNA. This is about ultimately editing genes in the long play. Right. And I've said this many times. This is not about mRNA. This is about ultimately getting the public to accept CRISPR and shutting up the Catholic Church, which was the largest opposition to gene editing up until COVID. And the only way you get the camel's nose under the tent is get mRNA, create the problem, get CRISPR to be a solution, and the Catholic Church has painted themselves into a corner saying that this was God's will.
So a couple of things. First, because I just think you hit the nail on the head. The part of that quote from Peter Daszak that I find chilling is the word hype. He didn't talk, Drew, about, that's why it's not just Machiavellian. He didn't talk about the importance of the mainstream media and continuing to expose the facts and continuing to educate the public. He said,
that's exactly
hype.
Right.
It's hype. That is the word that is chilling. It is the fear mongering, the fear porn. Keep it ginned up. Keep people with the hype. It's the hype that will drive this.